You go meet a nice girl or a guy, you don't expect them to marry you in the first meeting itself, right? Then why do you expect the same thing with your customers? Lead generation should be as easy. We should make the process as easy as the customer. But I come with a really different school of thought. If you make it easier for the customer did not really understand your product.
Welcome. Happy World Social Media Day. The next 2 days are going to be jam packed with some of the best speakers India has to offer. And we are going to be starting the summit with none other than Deepan. He is going to be talking about impact marketing, and we are going to be starting right away with an impact. So, thank you so much for joining us here today. Happy World Social Media Day again. And without further ado, Sindhu is going to be your lovely host for today. Over to you, Sindhu. Before that, hey, did you see that cool email reminder we sent you? That was sent to you by HandySense. Make sure you check them out. Over to you, Sindhu.
Hello, thank you, Kaushik, and hello, everyone. Happy Social Media Day to everyone out there. It's a dream come moment for us. The entire Storytellers tribe is super excited for the next 2 days. 18 sessions with 18 finest marketing minds of India. Thank you so much for all your overwhelming support and love you're showering on us each and every day. And that is what pushing us forward and do the justice for that. Thank you so much from the bottom of our heart. And we have Deepan Sidhu with us, and really I'm excited to start with him. This is our first virtual summit, and we are starting with a blockbuster. So he is a man of titles, I should say. He has been recognized as Adobe's top 100 digital marketing professionals in India and LinkedIn's top 50 content marketing specialists in India, Oracle's top 100 growth marketing professionals in Asia, Young Achiever of the Year 2019 at the Stars of the Industry. And he has been recognized also as 50 most influential digital marketing strategy leaders of India. Trust me, the list is not over. He has some other titles too. Being ranked as a top performer in a particular niche requires a lot of efforts, hard work, sleepless nights, consistency, creativity, innovation, and whatnot. Just think how much efforts must Deepan would have put to make this a reality. He has made more than 300 crores revenue for a lot of brands, including Amazon, Reliance Trends, Bosch and Rittal, WNS Services, ThoughtWorks, Texas Instruments. The list is not over. He is not just a top performer in the digital marketing realm. Whenever there is a social issue, he always be the first person to raise out his voice loud. I just became a fan of his after researching his profile. I'm totally excited to listen to the session, and it's a very interesting topic today. Social media for performance marketing. What is performance marketing? How social media can be leveraged to do that? Let's hear it from the top digital marketing professional in India, Deepan Sidhu. It's all yours, Deepan. Thank you for being with us today. Please go
Thanks a,
ahead.
thanks a lot, Sandhu. Thanks a lot, Kaushik. That was so overwhelming to hear about my profile from others. But we don't necessarily work for titles, But if titles come your way, you don't say no to it, right? Just take it. Thank you so much for having me. This is such a wonderful day. Social media means a lot to me. I mean, I wouldn't exist today if not for social media and the industry that supports social media, right? I would like to begin with saying happy social media day to all of you, and I'm really happy to be here and to talk about on one of my most favorite topics. Let me go ahead and quickly share my screen. Yeah. All right. So I'm not going to dive deep into introduction. Sindhu has given enough and more about me. Uh, so today we're going to talk about how social media plays a key role in the performance marketing strategy. But even before we get into that, I would really like to clarify what performance marketing is, right? In the West, affiliate marketing is referred as performance marketing. In India, paid advertising is referred as performance marketing. But my definition of performance marketing has always been different. It has been about making your marketing channels work. Despite your marketing channels, be it social, be it email, content, video, you name the channel, making those channels work to achieve business KPIs is performance marketing to me, right? And there is no father of performance marketing to give a standard definition. So each of us, we have our own understanding of these things. But I'm going to talk about a lot in terms of how social media plays a key role in achieving core business KPIs. We are not going to be talking about vanity metrics at all. Vanity metrics is something likes or views, right? Those metrics are great. It make you feel good. But if it doesn't contribute to the top line and bottom line of the business, I don't really see the need of running a campaign to achieve those vanity metrics. So do social media really work for performance marketing? Can social media be effectively utilized to achieve the core business objective, which is the top line and bottom line of a business? If you ask me that question right away, I would say yes. And it has been proven time and again. We are going to be talking about some best practices on the mistakes that I have seen a lot of other marketing campaigns do and what you shouldn't. And as a lot of youngsters enter the industry to become digital marketers, to become marketing professionals, it is really important for you to understand the basics, even before you dive deep into what the algorithms have to offer. Let's get started. The foremost thing, even before, generally what happens if you ask for a marketing strategy, I'll give you an agency perspective. I represent agencies, right? A client usually approaches us saying that, look, I have gotten this money and I want to make 5x or 10x out of that. I mean, I wish I really could answer that straight away. If not, I will not be in this business, right? And a lot of youngsters out there, you read a lot of junk material and you think, you switch on the button and, results are going to start flowing in. That's not how it is done. You don't start the strategy by picking the channel. You start the strategy with your consumers in mind. So even before we actually switch on a particular advertising channel, what we do is we do a lot of listening. We try and understand deeply about our consumers. So how do you generally understand about your consumers, right? Traditionally, what used to happen, large agencies and brands, they used to conduct surveys with the help of survey companies to understand deeply about consumers. But in the internet world, we have the best of the tools in our disposal. So how do you really know about your consumers? A lot of listening tools out there can help you do that. For example, you have Meltwater, you have Brandwatch, plenty of social media listening tool out there. Even Google has Google Alerts, not as sophisticated, but it still can get some job done. There is TweetDeck, which can help you understand what is happening on Twitter. But all of this is still secondary. The first is to listen to your own customer's voice. How do you listen to your own customer's voice? They would have already commented on different posts that you may have published. They would have already DM'd you about the issues that they have faced with their business, right? It is really important to go back in time, maybe 6 months, 12 months back in time, to just understand what are the pain points. When the customers really interacted with your business, what is that they were unhappy about? And you can do the same thing for competition. I can go dig up reviews of competitors. I can go dig up consumer complaints about competitors, just so that I can understand what is the customer unhappy about my competition. Can I offer that as a USP? This has to form the core of the strategy. Deeply understanding about your consumers, their pain points, their challenges, what are they unhappy about with the current system, right? When you do all of that, you get a real good picture of a consumer. And I'm not a big fan of the persona templates, John Doe and Jane Doe that you typically assume and put a lot of information. That's not how you do digital, okay? There is a lot of information that is readily available, and some of these tools can make your life easier in bringing that information to you in one place, but you can always go and dig manually. Go to Amazon, find your competitor product, see the reviews, read the reviews. The more the reviews that you read, the exciting ideas that you will get for communication. So why I'm paying so much attention to the communication and not necessarily the ad algorithms? Ad algorithms have gotten so sophisticated. You choose the objective and the ads are going to run. It is going to be shown to the right person. It is not unlike 5 years ago wherein you have to identify the interests of target segments and dive deep and run multiple campaigns to figure out what is working for you. Facebook offers conversion as objective. It is going to find exactly the type of buyers who can potentially buy your product. So the key here is in the communication and the ad copies and the visuals that you use, and that can come very powerfully if you really understand your consumers. As I go along, you'll see a short snippet at the bottom of my slide. That is an actual real case study of stuff that we have done for our clients. This is for a luxury real estate. Usually, what happens in real estate is you sell the product directly. Okay, I have a 2 BHK. It is located in this location, and this is going to cost you this money. Where is the emotion in this? The customer is not buying. When the customer is investing in a home, it is emotion. It is not about buying something that is built with bricks and stones, right? When you dive deep into why customer makes the decision of buying a home, why do they decide to buy in a certain place? There are so many emotions that comes into play. Family, society, things that you do want to do for your kids, want to do for your parents, all of that come into play when it is about making a buying decision. But it is not the same case with luxury real estate, because a luxury real estate is not a first time buyer. When I say luxury real estate, this would easily cost you upwards of 4.5 crores, right, in Indian rupees. It is not something that is meant for first-time buyers. And a first-time buyers doesn't really care about selling emotions to them. They don't. So they buy into a community, they buy into an idea, they buy into a lifestyle. So that is what you need to sell. So if you don't really understand these consumers, if you haven't read about them in the past, if you haven't understood their content consumption patterns, you really can't craft that right communication that will be appealing to your customers, right? So that is exactly what I'm trying to say here. Listen before you speak. Dig up a lot of data on your consumers. Everything is available on internet. When it is not available, you can always commission a survey with a proper survey organization in order to dive deep. Make a questionnaire, the questions that you need answers for, incentivize people to participate in your survey, get those answers, and then start working on your ad copy. This is one of my favorite topics that I love talking about, right? People usually differentiate branding and performance. But my point of view is, why does it have to be different in first place? Because what happens in a branding campaign, you make a lot of interesting stuff. You come up with really engaging videos, really engaging post copies, you run contests and things like that. Whereas when it comes to performance marketing, you keep your face straight. Hey, I'm selling this product. Please buy this from me. It is going to cost you this much. Why? End of the day, you're selling it to the same consumer. Why branding have to be exciting and performance have to be straightforward and rigid, right? So what we have started doing is we have started connecting the branding funnel and the performance funnels together, because Facebook and Google gives you the ability to understand who is engaging with your audience. And when you're running an ad campaign for the next time, you can go back and target these people who engage with your content. Right? This is something I don't see a lot of brands out there and a lot of agencies out there do not do, because you are spending a lot of money, time, and effort in producing content that is engaging the audience. And there are people who are coming and engaging with your content. Why are you not targeting them? And why is that performance have to be any different? Why is that performance have to be straightforward? Try doing that. Try using a very similar strategy that you deploy for branding. Use that in your performance, and you will see your CTRs skyrocketing. That is something that we have done. For example, for a hospitality client of ours, we always have buckets of audience created of people who engage with different pieces of content that we put out there. So when we run a performance campaign targeting these people, that campaign consistently generates 3.5x plus return on ad spend. And we have seen that going as high as 20x, because these are the people who know your brand, they've engaged with your content, they love following you, they love what you put out there. It is very easy for them to come and buy your product. It is just that you have not been talking to them. Okay. The next one, speak like your customers. I go back and tell this again and again, because the mediums of mainline and digital started converging. What started happening is, the brand folks started taking the ownership of digital as well. And the brand folks, they love their brand. I mean, they love their guidelines, they love their colors, they love the choice of words. It is really difficult for us to convince them, look, you don't have to be like that on digital. You don't have to be like that on social. Social media, people don't come here to buy your products. People come here to connect with other people. People come here to consume content that they like, right? And why is that, you have to put your TV commercial out there? Why is that you have to replicate what you have done for your print ad on social, right? So what we have seen working is, when we started speaking like our customers. How does the customer generally speak? They use emoticon, they celebrate their achievements, right? They celebrate something new that they have bought, they celebrate any of their life moments, right? All of this is celebrated in social media. When it comes to social media, the customer is the hero. That particular visitor who is going through the Facebook newsfeed, he's the hero of his life, not your brand. That is exactly what brands need to do. Make your customers look like heroes. Make your customer feel transformed. Make your customer feel happy about sharing their wallet with you. Right? That is when profitable ad campaigns start running. When we started using this colloquial terminologies in ad copy compared to the usual business communication that you typically see in performance marketing, we have seen click-through rates skyrocketing. For example, it's a SaaS client of ours, they are into project management. When we started speaking like their customers, and these words are literally picked up from reviews in G2 Crowd and that kind of websites where they review SaaS products. Literally picked up those words from there and used in our ad copies. We had seen CTRs as high as 230% compared to our regular business communication that we do. So this is a hack. Go find the reviews, pick up the choice of words, use them in your ad copy. You will definitely see your click-through rate improving. Okay. All right. The next most favorite topic of mine is to talk about messaging matching. So what generally happens is there is so often happens that you're short on budgets, then you would have built up only one landing page, but you also have the leverage to test out multiple different ad communication, right? So I've seen that many a times that what the customer sees on their Facebook newsfeed or an Instagram newsfeed or an Instagram story feed compared to what they see in landing page is completely different. And as a marketer, I know very clearly that you are short on budget, and that is why you are able to manufacture only one landing page. But the thing is, it just doesn't work at all. Instead of trying and doing multiple different testing of communication on your ad dashboards and having single landing page does not solve the purpose. Same is applicable on Google, same is applicable on YouTube. What the customer sees in the form of an ad is exactly what the customer expects to see on the landing page or on the web page. You cannot be talking about pencils and you cannot show a work from home desk on the landing page. You cannot talk about dining table and you talk about food delivery on your landing page, right? Does it make sense? That is exactly what happens if you think about it. You could use a customer pain point to get their attention in an ad copy, but if the customer do not see that pain point on the landing page, it is a completely mismatch. You would have always wondered that why is my conversion rates so low? Why is the industry standard conversion rate, as they say, have to be only 1% or 2%, right? It is because of mainly message matching. You get your message matching right, identify the keyword query, identify the pain point of the customer, say that exact pain point in that copy, continue that messaging on your landing page, you are going to see your conversion rates going up. The moment there is a slight mismatch, you will see your conversion rates going down, right? So whenever we run ad campaigns, we don't try and overcomplicate it. Sometimes we as marketers, we try and overcomplicate the process, thinking that, okay, I will test 5 different variables, I will test 5 different target audiences, things like that. You don't have to do that. Like I said, advertising algorithms have gotten so sophisticated, you don't have to run a lot of tests when it comes to target audience. The tests that you have to run always have to be on the communication. But whenever you do that, make sure your web interface and the ad are talking to each other. It cannot be two completely different things. As you can see, for a co-living client of ours, we were able to achieve leads at scale. All I had to do is saying that, boss, we have an organized PG. That's it. And the landing page said exactly the same thing. You don't have to deal with your PG uncle anymore. You're going to be dealing with a startup. It started working wonders. We were able to generate leads at less than 65 rupees. We generated over 6,500 leads in 3 months. You would be surprised, more than 50% of them ended up becoming paid customers. Because it is a very straightforward communication. What we said in our ad is what we exactly showed at the landing page. We tapped into the pain point that the most of the target audience go through. That's it. There is nothing else, no complications in ad communication. So, which is why I come back to the point that as marketers, we sometimes try and overcomplicate the testing process. But all we need to get is our messaging right on all our interfaces, wherever customers, the touch points are, then we are golden. The next point is don't be rigid, right? It is social media. Like I said, people don't come to social media to buy products. Then you don't really have to be like a businessman, well suit up, using a really complicated choice of words. None of that matters. End of the day, you're talking to consumers, who are on social media for their entertainment, for a knowledge gaining purposes, for their connecting with people, for that society or a social need perspective. That is why they come to social media. As a brand, you have to think about why they are on social media in first place, and how does your product play a role in their life, right? Which is why I keep going back to the point saying that you cannot run your TV commercial on social and you expect people to convert, because consumers are on TV for a different reason. They're watching their program, they don't mind your commercials coming in. But when they're on social media, their mindset is completely different. They don't expect to see the same thing, because unlike TV, the consumer has the power here. They can easily skip past the commercial that you're throwing at them. You must be wondering that, why is my view through rate so low? Why are my consumers watching only 3 seconds of my commercial? Because it is a commercial. That is why they're watching it only for 3 seconds, right? So what you need to start doing is, try and humanize the communication that you put out there. Understand the role of your product or service that plays in the customer's life. Because the customer is going to react to your communication, is their life going to be any different, right? Those are the touch points that we need to talk about. Use emoticons, use real life photographs, all of that make a difference. And you don't have to follow the typical brand communication that you generally deploy on print or on TV, on social media. Social media is completely different. So as you can see, we were running a festive campaign for a client of ours, who sell mattress, right? I'm sure, you must have heard of mattresses that is being sold online, but predominantly majority of India buys the mattress offline. So what we wanted to do is, we ran a lot of coupons, which gives them a 20% discount straight away on MRP. Generally, what happens? People do express interest in coupons on social media, but if you expect the social media user to go and convert offline, they won't. They will take the coupon and they will do nothing about it. So the challenge here was not customers getting the coupon. The challenge here was coupon redemption. So we really had to push this user to go walk to the store. So what we did, instead of telling that, my mattress is so thick, it's made of cotton, it will last for 10 years. We did not do any of that. We just said that you love sleeping. Who doesn't love sleeping? And we love sleeping too. That is exactly why we made this product for. And we have made this product available because we know for a fact that you'll be looking to buy a product like this during a festive season. And we have made this available on all your neighborhood stores, right? All you need to do is redeem this coupon, go good. It's just a very simple, again, no nonsense, no technical, very straightforward communication, but sounded like another human talking to, the human that is watching that. So we saw the coupon redemption rate at 35%. The usual coupon redemption rate from social media to offline is anywhere from 5 to 12%, not more than that. We saw 35% reduction. In order to push the consumers further, we actually did a follow-up campaign, wherein a bunch of agents were trained on the specific language, and they used that exact language. Instead of saying, "Sir, we have mattress," you said, "You will come and buy." You did not buy. No, no, no. So we made them train on, they love sleeping too, and how does this product play a role in their life, and then how the products are available in the nearest stores. They call the customers, understand where they are located, and they help them understand the nearest store, and they even booked an Uber cab for them to go. This is the extension of what you need to be doing as a brand. It cannot just stop at, okay, I distributed the coupon and then got done with it. So we took that messaging that we said on social media outside as well. The call center folks spoke the same language. The SMS spoke the same language. We enabled the social media customer who like to be staying at home to go walk to the store and buy the product. So you can make all of that happen as long as it's not rigid. You don't behave like a business. You behave like another human being. People will react nicely to you. Okay. The next one, proposing on your first date. Or you go meet a nice girl or a guy. You don't expect them to marry you in the first meeting itself, right? Then why do you expect the same thing with your customers? right? When with a date, you're so cautious about what you're speaking. You're so cautious about making yourself look like a really nice and engaging person. Then you do your own follow-ups. You do a lot of stuff to impress that person, and then finally one nice day you go and propose them, right? And it should be the same case with customers as well. Many of the campaigns that we run today, if you look at the frequency of these campaigns, it's not more than 1.5 or 2. You just cannot expect a new customer to convert in 1 or 2 clicks, right? And hence the click to conversion model just doesn't work. I mean, it may work to an extent if your product is extraordinary and that product is not available elsewhere, but that is not the case with 99% of the product that exists out there, right? So it is wrong to expect your customers to convert in 1 click. You remember the good old TV ads? Why is that the TV ads used to be very powerful? Did the TV ad play only once during one of the show? No. They kept bombarding that again and again and again and again throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month. Indirectly, somewhere in your mind, you form the perception that this is a great brand, right? Sometimes they make it a little more interesting by coming up with a jingle so that get registered in your brain. You have to deploy, consumers' mindset have not changed. Consumers, the choice of channels have changed, the choice of content consumption have changed, but the way we think about our perception of a brand, the way we go about buying a product, it has not changed a lot. I mean, we give it a lot of names, funnel, flywheel, roller coaster, and whatnot, but the customer behavior is the same. They don't necessarily an impulse buy. You talk about impulse purchases and you talk about long-lasting loyalty, customer loyalty, right? You don't always can run a business or scale a business with impulse buys. You need to build that long lasting relationship with your customer. And that happens when you consistently engage with the customer with different type of communication, because digital gives you that flexibility. It is very unlike your Sun TV and Star TV where you pay a certain amount of money and you can't take that back. You can, of course, stop it whenever you want. That is the beauty of social media and what digital has to offer you. So stop doing that. Start really looking at genuinely building relationships with the customers, and they will be genuine to you as well. Another major pain point that we as an industry that we have today is qualified leads. Like I said, just leads are not enough. Lead generation has become so easy. Facebook has made their own product wherein at the click of a button you can generate a lead. Google is coming up with their own product where at the click of a button you can generate a call, click of a button you can generate a lead. So what happens when the lead generation is so simple? As an objective lead generation, it becomes easy, right? It is not as tough as how it used to be before. Gone are the days, wherein you take up an Yellow Pages, you call the number, call different people, and you see if you are interested in the product. These days, it's really different. You go after the exact customer that you want to sell your product to, right? So the major challenge we as an industry have is qualified leads. So the qualified leads will only improve when you don't expect the customer to convert in the first click. So what happens because of the products like native lead gen, which Facebook offers, many of the customers do not even realize that they're filling up the form. There used to be this saying that the customer did not really understand the benefits that you're offering. And Facebook and the Google and the likes, what happens the moment the customer fills up the form, they will also show your competitor ads to the same person. So even before you picked up the phone on that customer, the customer would have already received phone calls from 5 of your competitors. This is why your native lead gen campaigns are not successful at all. It just doesn't work. You can still go ahead and use native lead gen products, but on retargeting cycles, not on the cold audience targeting model. As long as you continue to use native lead gen for your cold audience targeting campaigns, it is just not going to work. So what we generally do, we typically operate at a frequency of 3 to 4, and we expect the customer to convert at the third touch point or the fourth touch point. And we typically use video, across the life cycle, so it doesn't cost us a lot when it comes to customer acquisition cost. So you could try something similar, because it seemed to be working really well for us. Our customer acquisition cost, it's very much under control. Usually, the customer acquisition cost for any product like a real estate or banking product is anywhere from 12% to 24%, depending upon the product. So if as long as you keep the customer acquisition costs under 10, you're really running profitable campaigns, and that seemed to be working really well for us. So what generally happens, you run a campaign, you generate 800 leads. If you go and check the qualified lead percentage and how many customers ended up buying the product, it'll be very marginal. There is a reason call centers pay very low attention to the leads generated through social media and online, because most of the times they're non-qualified. And it is because you converted that customer in the first click itself, and the customer did not even realize they filled up the form for your business. Okay. All right. We all speak funnels, right? That funnel, this funnel, whatnot. And there is flywheel, and I just introduced a new word called roller coasters, right? Are you really bottom feeding them? When I say, are you bottom feeding your funnel? Everybody talks funnel. The traditional funnel that you typically see is awareness, consideration, loyalty, and purchase. In an e-commerce scenario, it is a home page, product page, add to cart, payment screen, and then complete transaction, right? It is all right. I'm not denying the definition of funnel, but the problem is we are not bottom feeding them at each of the stages. When I say bottom feeding them, we always run campaigns focused on conversions, which means we want the customer to come to my website and go and buy my product, right? That shouldn't be the case. But the first objective is for them to come and experience your homepage, what you have to offer as a brand. Then educate them on the categories that you have, and let them explore the different products that you have to offer. Then push the customer to add the product to the cart. So you will have to be building audiences at each stages of the funnel. Typically what happens, you push a lot on top of the funnel because the bottom of the funnel is already converting really well. You tend to focus more on that. But unless you feed audience to each of the stages of the funnel, you cannot really expect the bottom of the funnel to perform really well for you. So what we generally do is we always have ongoing campaigns on all the stages of the funnel to keep feeding these funnels. That is the only way to scale campaigns. When you start a new campaign on Facebook today, you must be surprised the cost per purchase will be very low, because you might have started with a budget of 10,000 rupees or 20,000 rupees. The initial results are great, and you're so excited, you're going to tell the client, please increase my budget to 10x. I'm going to deliver 10x the revenue for you. It won't happen, because you have not bottom fed the funnel. You are directly scaling the campaign to an increase in budget of 10x or 5x from what you're doing right now. Now, what Facebook will do, it will widen the reach. It will go after audiences who could potentially buy. See the difference between regular buyers and who could potentially buy, and what Facebook thinks is someone who could be convinced into buying. There are many different segments of audiences. Okay, so the moment you increase the budget, it is good for Facebook, not for you, right? So hence you need to look at what are the different funnels in my business. How do I understand the different buyer stages? How do I bottom feed them all of the time? If you consistently do that, instead of looking at the return on ad spends all the time, if you consistently do that, you will have profitable campaigns. Yeah. The next one is people over objects, and I might be a little biased in giving this opinion because I've seen for many of my friends and colleagues in the industry that objects also perform well. When I say objects, they just show the actual product, and people buy that as well. But what I have seen from my personal experience is when I show real people using the product, that has worked very well. When we use models, when we use real products, the real customers using real products always have better CTR, because the customers are so intelligent. They know it is a model. A model looks good. She is like that, or he is like that. I cannot be that. The customer knows that. An average customer is not a model, right? So what we typically do, we take up real customers using real photographs, or we identify influencers who look like an average customer, right? And we get them to use the product, show them in the action, get them to use the product, and what is the transformation that they get, after using the product. So this have worked consistently very well. Try using a real customer photograph over using a model photograph, and tell me if I'm wrong. You run that experiment, and you can always get in touch with me on LinkedIn to tell Deepan what you said was wrong. Right? Do that. The real customer photographs always work. This is a favorite hack that I learned from one of my inspirations, Ryan Dice, who's the founder of digitalmarketer.com. He keeps talking about post-purchase funnel. And I have not been a big fan of it. Generally, typically what happens is you convince the customer so much, you've already spent a lot of money. They come to the different stages of your website. then once they finish the transaction, you stop retargeting them. That is a typical journey, right? And even if you want to go after them, you go after them maybe after 2 months or 3 months in the hope that they will buy your product again. But what many of the most successful Facebook advertisers do is they have a strong post-purchase funnel. A post-purchase funnel is an immediate upsell as soon as the customer buys the product. Because the customer is very convinced, they opened up the wallet. It is wrong for you to assume that they will not open the wallet once again, right? So we have seen that working really well. Instead of using a traditional upsell wherein I show the product, buy this product as well, we have used videos where the brand went and thanked the customer for buying it. And if there is any problem that they are facing, they can always get in touch with us, and we'll replace the product or we'll take the feedback and improve further. That kind of communication we have used in post-purchase. That has changed. That has done a lot of wonders for us. The post-purchase funnel, we call it, it always works. It has the highest CTR because the customer has just purchased the product. And you're thanking the customer for buying. Typically what happens, you send an email or you send an SMS. That's a machine-generated transaction email. You don't necessarily send a personalized thank you message. Try doing that on your Facebook, and you will see your CTRs going up, you'll see your view-throughs going up, your upsell funnel will start performing very well, instead of going and targeting the same customer after 3 months. Okay? Vernacular is really powerful. We do love our languages as Indians. We love speaking our language. We love when a brand speaks our language. But it is wrong for brands to assume that people in specific region will react if it is in vernacular. That's not true. Like, I'm from deep south in Tamil Nadu, but doesn't mean that you talk to me in Tamil. You can talk to me in English, and I may not react to a Tamil communication at all. Right? It is the same case whether you take Assam or you take West Bengal, you take Andhra Pradesh. It is wrong to assume that if you talk in your own vernacular language, it will work. Right? So typically what we do is, we don't use vernacular for the first touch point communication. We use vernacular for retargeting communication. So typically, what we generally do is, you put up a lot of vernacular videos on YouTube, which is a pull channel, right? So in a YouTube kind of a channel, what happens? People go search for it, they locate your video, they watch your video. They have asked for it. They've asked to watch the video in their local language, right? You can go after these people with a vernacular communication. It may work really well. So that is what we have seen working for a fintech platform. During demonetization, we came up with a really nice video that we had put up, on YouTube in vernacular language, in Telugu, Tamil, Kannada, and Malayalam. A lot of people came and watched that video, and then we use these audiences to go after them to buy the product. It worked really well. I mean, we have had our CPLs came down almost half. And it used to be roughly about 650 rupees per lead. It came down all the way to 350 to 400. So vernacular is really powerful, but do not assume that people in South or people in East, they always are in their own language. They don't react to English. That's not true. Okay? Testing is overrated. And I remember talking about this when I initiated the presentation. Testing is good, but too much testing is not good for health. Okay, just for the sake of testing, you don't bifurcate the audience. You don't bifurcate the communication. It's just not required. Have you ever tried duplicating your ads within the same ad group? Like exact same. Don't change the visual. Don't change numbers. Don't change anything. Just try duplicating that campaign and you tell us the results, because it won't be the same. So does it mean that you A/B tested it? No, it is not true. So what generally happens is algorithms begin because you generally initiate a campaign on any of the social networks with an objective, with reach as an objective, with traffic as an objective, with conversions as an objective. Even though if you feed audience into these campaigns, Facebook will still show it to very different people. Based on its own understanding of the audience, Facebook will show it to different side of people within the huge spectrum of audience you're going after. Next time, try duplicating the same ads. And if then the ads are performing in a very similar range, the CTR is similar, your cost per purchase is similar, then your theory is right. Otherwise, don't try and test and overcomplicate it. As you can see, for the co-living client that I was talking about, it is an exact similar replica of the ad, but the second ad had 77% uplift in lead volume. two same ads, two same target audience, same budget, but the second ad just generated enormous results. So which is why, even if you're going with a single communication, one piece of communication I'm talking about, you just replicate into 3 or 4 times and you will see different results. But when your campaigns are going to deliver similar results, that's when you have to make B version of the communication. So even when you're doing A/B testing, don't try and change too many things. Just change one thing. Only then you will have conclusive results. I've seen a lot of people trying and changing the targeting, trying and changing the visual, copy, call to action, everything in the B version of that. That is not A/B testing. A/B testing is when you change one thing. And again, testing is overrated. Do it if it is required. Otherwise, it's not required. I'm a huge fan of videos, and people generally say that videos is for awareness and videos doesn't work for performance. I beg to differ. Videos work for performance, period. But when I say videos work for performance, these are the consumer-friendly videos, not the ones you see on TV and theaters. Okay, I really don't like those videos getting promoted on social. As a marketer, I stay away from watching those commercials. I mean, of course, there are aggregators, who call out really good campaigns. You might want to go gain your knowledge and things like that. In that case, it's fine. But for consumer, I don't think they prefer to watching commercials on their Instagram and Facebook. So try and pick up consumer-friendly videos. Shoot actual videos with your consumers. Get an actual testimonial. Find an influencer who look like an average customer. Get them to use a product and use that video. So these kind of videos work really well. Compared to the typical model, high production value TV commercials. You will have two completely different ones, and my choice is always with the common videos that consumers like to see on social media. So when we used these common consumer-friendly videos, we have had a consistently 4x plus return on ad spends on cold audience campaigns. Cold audience, these are the audience who have not been exposed to our brand at all. But when we use a very similar customer using the video and how their life was transformed after using our product, it works wonders. Okay, this is a hack I wanted to give you, and we have run a lot of this in the US, UK, and Germany, but we haven't tested a lot in India, wherein you promote your product through your influencer accounts. Okay, in India, we have tried doing that, but influencers are not really willing to share accesses or not willing to run ads for us on their profiles, but it works wonders. Influencers have spent a lot of time and money in building their networks, building really a cult kind of a following for themselves. When they promote your product, usually what happens, they'll put up a post and they will forget about it. 2% or 3% of your followers may have seen that content, then they would have bought your product. But what about the rest of the 97% of the audience, right? So when you execute ad campaigns using the influencer account to their followers, it delivers extraordinary results. So this is a hack. Next time you try and execute an influencer campaign, do not just stop at branding. Try and strike a deal with the influencer saying that, hey, why don't you execute this campaign for us? Let's see how the results are. Trust me, the followers, the real genuine followers of influencers will buy the product if the influencer is endorsing it. That is why celebrity endorsement and influencer endorsements are so powerful in our country. The next hack is automate your campaigns, not entirely. It is when we say automate your campaigns, when we usually go ahead and run campaigns, we typically run like 100, 150 versions of the same communication or slightly modified communication. It really gets tedious, if you have to monitor each of these campaigns' performance at one go. So Facebook itself, lets you set up really smart rules. For example, if your cost per purchase is exceeding a certain value, you can shut down that campaign. If your CTR is not performing to your expectations, you can shut down that campaign. A lot of these simple rules, can be executed. It will be really, really useful if you're running large scale campaigns. For example, we work with a Booking.com competition in the US, and just with these small automations, we were able to manage really large scale campaigns and to scale this spends from almost, $30K a month to almost $1 million a month at a profitable customer acquisition cost. In these kind of online travel aggregator, if they have to be running profitable campaigns, they have to consistently produce 15x plus return on ad spends. It is not just 1x or 2x. Because they don't own the inventory, they buy another inventory and they sell it. All their ad campaigns have to perform at 15x plus return on ad spend. right? And it's really difficult to scale that kind of a campaign. And if you're looking at running one campaign at a time, you will have to rely on automation a lot. That brings me to the end of the discussion. I hope you found the tips useful, and you can find me everywhere. Just Google my name, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, Story Tribe, Storyteller Tribe, Kaushik, Sindhu, and the lovely team and the lovely community that you guys have built. I'm absolutely honored to be able to talking to you guys, to your audience on this lovely day. Thank you so much for having me.
The community has grown all by itself, Deepan. We didn't do anything. It all grew all by itself. It's a team effort, I should say. And thank you so much, Deepan. It's such a brilliant presentation, and I hope I'm sure everyone out there enjoyed a lot and gained a lot of insights and a lot of takeaways. Also, I assume the definition of performance marketing as something else, and it's an eye opener for me, definitely. And thank you so much for being with us today. I do have few questions for you, Deepan. Can you go ahead? Okay. The first question would be like, when it comes to performance marketing, we collect a lot of data to analyze whether it is working out or not, right? So, how about the artificial intelligence and machine learning in the data aggregation process? Especially, of course, it is gaining its momentum and penetrating into different service domains. But what about performance marketing? Does it really help? Is it really helpful, or does it making any sense in the?
It does. It does. We are actually worried about the kind of developments that are happening in AI. It is replacing most of the tedious jobs that used to exist in the industry. For example, programmatic advertising. It's a form of it is really highly data driven in nature, and the job of programmatic is to replace people who are behind the dashboards. Okay, wherein it is so intelligent in nature, it automatically buys inventory that is aligned with your brand and objectives. It adjusts its inventory, it adjusts its bidding strategy based on your budget and based on the kind of historical results that you've gotten. This is one use case of it, wherein it is not really AI, but how data-driven advertising can be really, really powerful. So, having said that, AI continues to help us in many, many ways. For example, things that it used to take a lot of time. For example, customer service. Customer service, it involves a lot of people. It involves a lot of measurement, in order to provide extraordinary customer service to people. But simplest form of AI in the form of useful chatbots, wherein you can define workflows, wherein you can get NLP into a play, wherein you can build really intelligent chatbots to have really sophisticated and intelligent conversations with people. And earlier, people used to be averse of conversing with bots, but they don't mind conversing with bots these days because the answers are much quicker instead of talking to a human being. From a business perspective, it is certainly helpful. From an advertising perspective, it is really exciting on what it brings to the table. But the worry is, which is why I keep telling people that you need to be constantly upgrading yourself. Otherwise, AI is going to eat your job, right? I haven't seen AI contributing a lot in terms of creativity per se, in terms of visuals, in terms of videos, in terms of ad communication. It still requires a lot of human intelligence. But the menial jobs that used to exist is slowly getting replaced, in terms of basic workflows, automated campaign management and things like that. It's already being taken over by AI.
Yes, thank you. So it can save a lot of your time in the data aggregation process, right? Great. So my next question is, I came across this one of the articles on performance marketing. Like when a part is clicking on a publisher content using a mobile, and he's completing an action, for example, sign up or transaction or some kind of closure in another device, let's say desktop. So does this device crossover has any effect? They told that the publisher who is not getting any closure may not be getting any rewards. Is that true, or what am I
See, it
missing?
used to be a big problem, Sindhu, and I know exactly what you're talking about. The cross-device attribution used to be a big problem. But in terms of, for example, a publisher is very likely to be a part of a Facebook ecosystem or a Google ecosystem. I mean, I can vouch for both these folks. They have fixed that problem a while ago, because it is not just the inventory, right? Facebook and Google has a lot of intelligence about the customer, right? They know for a fact that this phone belongs to you, this laptop belongs to you, right? There is absolutely no way that they do not know. But over the period of time, they have built sophisticated algorithms that actually rewards the publishers rightly. That problem do not exist anymore if the publisher is part of the Google and Facebook ecosystem. I mean, there are of course a lot of other programmatic ecosystem, OpenX and Sizmek and things like that. They have also gotten sophisticated ecosystem, but there are 99 other ad exchanges that promises higher margins to publishers, but their technology is not as sophisticated. So publishers still don't get the right due because the technology is not so sophisticated in understanding the consumer in terms of cross-device attribution. So that is one challenge that continues to exist, but it is the publisher's choice. And if you wanted to do higher margins on your inventory, you went ahead with someone who is not well known, but that not well known person cannot give you the technology for the right attribution. So it'll probably take a little more time for all the ad exchanges and publishers to be on the same page. IAB as we speak is working on standardizing the protocols behind attribution and things like that. Attribution is a big problem; it continues to exist. But when it comes to Google and Facebook, it's pretty clear. It is already sorted to me.
Okay, fine. Thank you for that, Deepan. And I have one more question. We got this from our community. Do you have any suggestions for the materials or any kind of books who loves to start his career in performance marketing?
Good question. I've been vocal against people who sell digital marketing, especially academicians who sell digital marketing. I absolutely have no problem with practitioners selling what they know, but I have a problem with academicians selling digital marketing. Please do not spend your money on a certificate course in the objective of learning anything. Okay. As a recruiter, as an agency recruiter, I do not worry about certificates at all. Even if you did not finish your college, that doesn't matter to us. So what you need to do, if you really have to learn, Google themselves have an academy. It's called Google Skill Shop. Facebook themselves have an academy. It's called Facebook Blueprint, wherein you can learn everything about their products. And if you master Google and Facebook, the rest everything is easy peasy. Okay, LinkedIn is easy, Twitter is easy. I'm not making any comments about TikTok in this, but otherwise, if you master Google and Facebook, understanding the advertising, the digital advertising ecosystem becomes extremely easy. Start from their own places, Google Skill Shop and Facebook Blueprint, and go through every little material. You'll have a pretty strong understanding. But what you need to actually do as a fresh graduate, who's trying to experiment, take 500 rupees or 1,000 rupees instead of spending it on a useless certification course. Actually run that campaign. It's okay. If you're not generating ROI, it's completely fine. But spend 10 rupees, spend 20 rupees, try and see, how these systems behave. Try, design a creative on Canva and test it. Build your own website. Doing things like this will actually make a lot more value than you going and gaining, your knowledge from a certification program. Don't do that. So these are the few. And HubSpot has some really good courses. HubSpot Academy has a course on inbound marketing. It's really, really useful. And go to YouTube. There is one thing that I want fresh graduates to master, that learn how to use Google, because it's not like put in the keyword and get the answer. You can literally use a lot of hacks in order to pull even premium courses, make you available for free, right? So I'm not going to teach all of that here, but if you go search for how to use Google like a pro, a lot of people have written articles, in terms of what kind of codes that you need to use to pull the right file that you need. Start doing that, it'll be really helpful.
That's great. That's really helpful. That's going to be really helpful for a lot of students and the beginners who love to start the career in digital media marketing. It's Facebook Blueprint and Digital Skill Shop. Do remember all this, guys. Yes, and I have one more question for you, Deepan. So, this is asked by Kaushik actually. Why don't Kaushik ask the question directly? You had something to ask, right?
All right, Deepan. So we touched on a lot of concepts here. So one small doubt is when we say that there's this often misconception. I love the way how you even started with that. How brand awareness and performance marketing need not be different. Well, it's often extremely difficult to convince someone. Saying because when they say performance marketing, I loved your definition again, the way how you even portray and perceive performance marketing to be. But can you touch upon concepts of say, if I do this, I say I run this campaign only for brand awareness, and if I do, how do you differentiate brand awareness and performance marketing as such, or do you still see them as the same?
I will change that question slightly.
Hmm?
There is no performance marketing without branding, without
Wow.
branding. Okay, you can still run a lot of activities that is purely aimed at awareness. For example, if you don't have an online destination, you don't have a website, or you don't have a digital product, and most of your products is available online. You take a shampoo, you don't necessarily buy a shampoo online. While you are buying something else, you may end up buying a shampoo, but not that. There are so many thousands of products that is still very popular offline, right? What happens to the products that is available offline? How are you going to run performance marketings for the campaigns for those products, right? In that case, branding itself becomes performance, right? So generally what we do is, these campaigns, the common problem with the industry is this is always treated separately, but it shouldn't be treated separately. When you have a web destination, you can combine both of that can happen offline. But when your products are going to be available offline, your branding campaigns need to push customer to walk to the store. Your branding campaigns needs to push the customer to be on the top of the mind recall, because when they are walking across the aisle in a supermarket, they get to choose their product. So that ways, you know, I'll go back to the same question that you raised. Is it really different? It is not really different. The only benefits that performance marketing for a digital product offers is the measurement. Typically, what happens, you run TV campaigns and you print campaign. Whatever sales happen during that particular duration, you attribute that success to that campaign, right? But in performance marketing, you will be on a digital product. You will be able to literally measure everything. How many clicks have happened, how many visitors, which pages they visited, how many add to carts, how many purchase, how much did they purchase. You can even go after them for upselling the products. So that is the only difference, if you ask me. But do not run a performance campaign alone without branding. So because there is no performance without branding.
Beautiful, beautifully put.
Hope it answered Kaushik's question really well.
Yeah.
Okay, the last question from my side, Deepan. So, is it a good idea to approach different publishers for a same service or a product?
It's a bit old school, if you ask me, because unless a publisher is willing to work on a cost per performance model, okay. Typically, what happens is there are quite a few publishers out there who will work for a cost per lead model because it's really easy to generate a lead, like I said. But if you get them to work on a cost per sale model, that is really difficult. And I've had this problems with running my campaigns through publishers in the past, because for a publisher the objective is to make a sale, so they get that commission. They don't really care about your brand. In the hope of that, your brand get misused a lot. And they don't necessarily follow the same communication. They will use their own subject lines. They will try and position your product differently in order to generate a sale. So the brand perception that some of the publishers, not all of them, some of the publishers end up creating can create a big damage for your brand in the longer run, right? And we typically, and the working with publisher model is not a scalable model unless you have an affiliate marketing wing in your department. For example, Amazon, they have an affiliate marketing wing whose only job is to identify publishers who will work on a cost per performance model. But for a typical small business and medium business, an investment in an affiliate marketing wing does not make sense to me. But there are good affiliate marketers out there who are like aggregators, who are connected to a lot of publishers. They know they have the history of data of working with these publishers. You can work with them instead of actually going after individual publishers. So it depends on the type of brand that you represent and the type of brand that you work for.
So it depends on the brand that you're looking for and brands or that branding, the type of branding you want your product to have. That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Deepan, for being with us today. It's really an honor for the entire Storytellers tribe. Thank you so much for answering all those questions. We do have a lot of questions and hope all the viewers out there would be having a lot to ask you. And which is the right platform to reach you?
LinkedIn.
Great. So, viewers, it's LinkedIn. Just go catch hold of him and shoot out your questions. He is such a down to earth person. Whenever I call him or text him or try to reach him over LinkedIn or whatever social media I try to reach him through, he's always available and very sweet to answer even your silly questions. Thank you so much, Deepan, for being with us today again and again. We cannot thank you enough for being with us today amidst of all odds.
Thanks a lot, Storyteller Tribes, for having me.
Thank you, Deepan. And yes, Kaushik, over to you.
Again, Deepan, throughout the entire session, I was pretty much glued to my screen. I could not look away anywhere. Like my phone kept buzzing, everything was happening, but I was glued to my screen. Thank you so much. Those were beautiful golden nuggets you dropped there, and such actionable conversations as well. Like everything you said was pretty practical and to the point. So thank you so much for that, Deepan. Again, thank you so much for joining us. I know Sindhu's already said that so many times, but one last time, thank you so much.
Honored. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right. So, hey, what were your top takeaways from the session? Well, pretty much every slide Deepan had, I had like one top takeaway from each slide. But what were your most favorite? Two top takeaways. As Deepan said, he's on every platform. So make sure you find him, tag him, send out those takeaways so that everybody else can also learn on this social media day on social media. Make sure you also tag us so that we find you. And hey, there might be a really cool goodie coming knocking your door. We have a ton of sessions to follow. Make sure you bookmark this page and also enable notifications if you haven't already. I will see you in the next session.
Hold up, just before we leave, this summit will not be possible without you, our speakers, and our exquisite sponsors, Handysons. Handysons are the official partners of Twilio Sendgrid, arguably one of the best mailing tools out there, right? These cool emails we're sending you, as I mentioned, will send you through Handysons as well. So make sure you check them out. They make the life of all developers and marketers alike easy. It's completely plug and play. Make sure you check them out, as I mentioned. And for the summit attendees, they have this cool 6 months for free offer, and their pro plans are at 20% off as well. Make sure you find the link down there, and we will see you in the next session. Make sure you send out all your social shares with hashtag #ThankYouSocial, thanking the power of social and our digital heroes. I will see you in the next session.